Hello everybody, this is another video tutorial in which I explain you how to set up exercises for verbal classes. Let's go first to our dummy folder, and there's university, and then I think it was Hebrew 1. Yeah, here's our dummy folder. Alright, good. So here was the exercise that I created in the last tutorial. And a question was asked by one of you, namely, what is the difference? Here we have it. What is the difference between first and second choice compared to using the different yeses for verbal classes? So imagine, again, this is an exercise where first good role and first aleph verbs are being tested. So we want to have only first good roles and only first aleph verbs. How do we do this? Now, when you go to the verbal class selector, let's here delete this. Okay, good. So, and well, let's clear everything. Okay, so now we go to the verbal class. We can now select first good role verbs. You see, we click here on yes, and in our MQL query it says we want verbal class must be has first good role. So now we're retrieving all verbs that have a first good role. If we want to also add, in this case, first aleph, that was a request, we could click here on first aleph. You see what has happened here. Now the MQL query says we want verbal class with first good role and a verbal class with first aleph. This most likely, in this case for sure, will not result in a productive exercise. In fact, there will be no forms being displayed to the student because there are no verbal forms that have first good role and first aleph. For example, amar is just a first aleph verb and not a first good role and a first aleph verb. So if you choose first good role and first aleph, you're basically excluding each other. So we can quickly demonstrate this by going to, well, let's save this. Save. Okay. Yes. Let's now go to the exercise and play that exercise. Let's go into our dummy folder. Dummy, here's the exercise that we just created. You see, no sentence is found. The reason for that is because there is no first good role and first aleph. For example, you can also not do first good role and first nun, right? That's a logical impossibility. Verbal class, you cannot say I want to have a first good role and I want to have a first nun. That's not going to happen. So for that to work, we cannot, for having first good role and first aleph verbs, we cannot use the and operator. We cannot use verbal class as first good role and verbal class as first aleph, as we exclude each other, as they exclude each other with the and formula. So we need an or formula. We want first good role or first aleph. And that's where you can use these different choices. So you can now say, I want a first good role, yes, right? Or a first aleph. Let's look here to the MQL query. When we click at the moment where I click yes, you'll see the term or. So the difference between putting it all in first choice, namely first good role and first aleph, we have here an and. Instead of using first and second choice, now we have an or. So now we have first good roles or first aleph forms. This should work because those forms don't exclude each other anymore. Now we save it. We run the query, we run the exercise again, and you'll see we have now a productive exercise. Here we go. We have now first good role, here Allah, obviously first good role, and then again a first good role again, and here we have first aleph. So that works. Now what you have seen probably in the examples that we just saw here in this exercise, that we have, for example, here asa, this is a first good role and a third hey, or a first good role and a lamed hey verb. Probably I assume that this colleague only wants to introduce simple weak forms That is just first good oral verbs that are not combined with other weaknesses. So therefore, we can now go back and say, yes, we do want to have first good oral verbs. But if we have a first good oral verb, we want to make sure that it's not also, for example, a lamed hey verb. So we can say yes, first good oral, but no lamed hey or a third hey. Yeah. So I guess as you start introducing different verbal forms, verbal classes, I'm sure you want to exclude most of the other forms and just show, so to say, pure first good oral forms. So we can now do this, and perhaps you don't want to show any regular verbs either. So you might want to exclude them as well. So now you see the MQL query has become quite big, because what does it say? It says the verbal class must have a first good oral, but it must not have third hey, and it must not have second vav, and it must not have second yod, and it must not have geminate, and so, and it must not, you see, and not. And then we see, but it must have first aleph, yeah? Or, so it's basically this first good oral with no, or first aleph. But of course, you want to also exclude for the first aleph verbs that are double weak. So you probably want to add also, I don't want it to be first good oral, of course not, a second good oral, a third good oral. I don't want it to be these other forms too, like a third hey or a third aleph, ayin, ayin vav. So you could also reduce this. So now what you see, we have a super long query where it says we want to have the first good orals. Yeah, that's what we want. But when we have a first good oral, we want to make sure that it's not partaking in any of the other weaknesses. That's where you have the and not, until we get to the, where's the or? Here's our or. Or we want first aleph. But when we want to have first aleph, we also want to exclude it to participate in any other weaknesses. So therefore, and not this, and not this, and not this, and not this, and so on. Okay, so now we have an excellent exercise where the student is exposed to only pure first good oral verbs and pure first aleph verbs. So we click on save. Save, yes. Now let's run the exercise again, and we should have exactly what we want. See, now we have amad, which is just the first good oral verb. Let's move on. Amad. Next, avar. Rachaf, you see it's Rachaf, so again first good oral, but nothing else. Amar, yeah, first aleph, and so on. Yeah. So this is how you can manipulate or further classify or tweak your exercises to make sure it does exactly what you want by using first choice, second choice, third choice, fourth choice. So you could say I want to have purely P nun verbs, first position nun verbs. I want to have pure first position aleph verbs. I want to have pure first position vav verbs. Perhaps you want to train your students just on the weaknesses of the first consonant. You can all do that here by excluding then everything else. So I want to have first good oral, for example, and I want to have first aleph only, and I want to have P nun only. So now we can take those other verbal classes, exclude them. So now we have first aleph, first nun only, and perhaps let's add also a vav yod verb. So as a fourth choice, we can say we are fine with having a first position vav or first position yod verb. But we want to exclude all the others. Well, let's just have first position vav verbs now. We exclude them. See, now we have different first position weaknesses, excluding any weakness in the second or the third consonant. We can do yes, save it. Now when we run it, we should have first aleph, first nun. You see, nagat. Here we have a first nun first nun verb. The next one is again a first nun. The next one again a first nun. Then we have a first aleph. Then we have a first aleph, and so on. Okay, I hope that was helpful. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to help. All the best. Bye-bye.